Hello listeners, Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are tuned to the Nighttime Podcast, focused on the fringe of Canada.
Hello listeners. In this episode of Nighttime, we're going to discuss a story that I suppose is the reverse of a missing person case. This is the story of a found person. More specifically, a man who was found hanging dead from a tree near the Halifax Airport on October 8th of 2004. This man, despite 16 years of effort, has yet to be identified and has adopted the name the Halifax Airport John Doe. In tonight's episode, I'm going to be joined by Lena Snooks, a local researcher and true crime enthusiast who has made it her mission to try to track down the Halifax Airport John Doe's family and put an end to this mystery. So let's get to it. In tonight's episode, we'll be joined by Lena Snooks, and our topic is the Halifax Airport John Doe. Lena, we're live on YouTube, and I'm proud to be live with someone who's not so far away. You're a fellow Nova Scotian like me.
I sure am in Dartmouth.
Yeah. Before we get into it, let's talk about you. Tell me a bit about you.
I'm 23. I go to Dalhousie. I work as a work clerk at IWK and the NICU. Yeah. And I just love true crime. I listen to podcasts all the time. That's basically it. And I love local true crime. Like the cases around here that aren't solved really interest me. Yeah,
that's good. You said your NICU is your job. That's like intensive care for babies?
Yes, it's a neonatal intensive care unit.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, it's really like it's a rewarding job. It's sad, but it's rewarding. So
well, it's also it's a job that I'm very glad that there are people dedicated to do it because that's an important job. I don't think I always understood how hard the life of like a nurse was. Like I think I got the concept of it, but when my wife and I had our first child, like I left the hospital that night being like every nurse needs a 10-time raise because you realize like what they actually do when push comes to shove and a nurse is there by your side. You're like, oh my.
And it's funny because I started working there. My mom has been an ICU nurse for like over 30 years, and she got me the job there, and I never really appreciated what she did. And then when I got the job, like working with her, I was like, oh my God, she comes home and raises me and my brothers and work and does this. So it blew my mind.
So tell me about your true crime passion. So what I know about you, and fill in where I'm wrong, is my understanding is you're a true crime fanatic and you do like a lot of kind of like case summaries on Reddit. Is that what you do? Yeah,
I do. And I don't post on there enough, but I just started doing it for fun because when I first got into true crime, I found the Reddit sub. It's like unsolved mysteries or unresolved mysteries. I think that's what it is, and that's what really got me into true crime. Uh-huh. So I made a Reddit account and I started posting Nova Scotian stories that I couldn't find on Reddit or anything, or ones that were like very scarce on the internet, I guess.
Oh, that's cool. That's my buddy's name is Robin Warder. He hosts a podcast called The Trail Went Cold. That's how he started as well. He was he did like various like true crime lists and true crime, short story kind of things that he would write up and post on Reddit. I saw a few of yours and I don't know how we didn't come across, like how our paths didn't cross, because the stuff that you write about, it just like me, you're into the local stories that haven't really gotten a lot of attention, and you're kind of picking through the newspapers and whatnot, finding the breadcrumbs and trying to put stuff together, it seems. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, and now I actually want to go back and edit because like I typed them up so fast and the spelling mistakes. I just want to get my info out there. But yeah, no, I just try and like find everything I can on the internet because sometimes it's really hard. Like I don't know, it's just not enough people report on the case. I think there was one up. Yeah, no.
And another thing too is like I find if a story goes national, so something happens in Nova Scotia, small town Nova Scotia, maybe it becomes a story across Nova Scotia and CBC does an article or something. If it goes national and, different news outlets are picking it up across the country, then all of a sudden you'll have like 5 or 6 different articles that, maybe have taken different spins on the story or different takes. So you're getting more info. If it goes international, like say Elisa Lam did,
Yes.
You have documentaries and full, 5-page articles. But a lot of the stuff you write about, like the Halifax Airport John Doe, you may have a police report, a press release, in 5 paragraphs in the local newspaper. Like his story that we'll get into here, there hasn't been a lot, said about it or a lot done. And I don't know why that is, but I think it may simply be the fact that his story is such a mystery that there's not even a lot you can say because there's so little to know other than just this kind of template for a mystery. I remember hearing about this, but I've never got into it until I got your email. You suggested this case, and I often will get a case suggestion, which is like, hey, Jordan, have you ever thought about covering this? Yours was... Instead of that, you had this case for this guy. I felt like you were advocating on behalf of the Halifax Airport John Doe to do this story. So it's obviously something real, personal to you or something that you found yourself connected to. How did you learn about this guy?
Well, I first heard about him when I first got into true crime, probably 5 years ago. But again, I couldn't find much on him, so I just kind of left it. And then I think it was a year and a half ago, I started looking into John Does around here that weren't identified, and there's only the 2. There's the one in Yarmouth, and there's the Halifax John Doe. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, he was found by the airport, and just the details were so bizarre. Like he had so many, I don't know, identifiable things with him. Like his glasses, he had his backpack, mm-hmm. But it blew my mind that he wasn't identified yet because there was even a skull, a bust made of his face, and that's what was crazy to me.
It is. I think I first heard about him years ago, probably not long after this happened, and it left my mind probably because I assumed it would have been identified and dealt with, because it's like you said, there's a lot of information that should help him become identified, as well as we have good photos, and not photos of him, but artistic takes on what he would have looked like. And it should have been spread far and wide enough that you would think they would have matched what happened here in Halifax with a missing person case somewhere in the world. But yeah, that didn't happen. So let's talk first about some of the basics of it. So we have no idea what leads up to this man's death, but for us as the people following the story, it really starts on October 8th, 2004, with a discovery near the Halifax airport. So maybe if you can just describe, the scene and what was actually found. How did the Halifax Airport John Doe make himself known?
On October 8th, mm-hmm. he was spotted on Highway 102 behind the Petro-Canada gas station, which isn't there anymore. Okay. And it was, kind of wooded. I'm probably not densely wooded, but anyways, he was found hanging there. And police said he was probably there for about 10 days. He was badly decomposed. 5 to 10 days, they said. But that's another ththing. I wonder why his decomposition was so bad if he was only there for 10 days. But he had a bag, just a backpack with some clothes in it. He had expensive clothing on, and he had a couple Canadian change in his pocket, but that was about it. There was no suicide note or I don't know, anything.
Yeah, but it's not it's not like a homeless man that was found, passed out and died or something. This he was a well-dressed man with expensive clothes that were neatly arranged, is my understanding, in his bag.
Yeah, exactly. He was wearing. I mean, he had Dolce and Gabbana glasses in his bag. He was wearing like brand new Timberland boots. They said.
Hmm.
So I mean, and he had his hair. I think it was in like dreads, short dreads. But
Hmm.
he was dressed well, like expensively, and he was well groomed, well taken care of. I
Hmm.
mean, so he obviously, and he didn't die accidentally. It looked like he hung himself. He was found
Hmm.
hanging from a tree. So it was really bizarre.
Yeah, and do you know how, like, where he was found? That how close to the airport is this? Because he's referred to as the Halifax John Doe or the Halifax Airport John Doe. Like, how far from the airport is this gas station he was behind?
It's actually funny. In December, I drove out to the airport and I looked at I was just happened to be out there, and though there's another gas station there now, and I
Mm.
kind of like I was just we were dropping somebody off, and I was like, okay, so it's about 5 minutes, I'd say, or maybe even 4 minutes. Like there's a Tim Hortons, but it's a walking distance away. It's really not that far.
Yeah, so it's like because that's always been one question is if what his connection was to the airport, but where he would have been found, the only plausible reason he would be there would have been either coming from or going to the airport. So it's reasonable to say, whatever led to him there has something to do with coming
The
or going
airport.
through the airport. Yeah.
Well, exactly, because the airport's so outside of the city, right? It's
Mhm.
like you have to drive like 20 minutes to get to the airport, and on the way there, there's not really anything. So you definitely would think that the airport has to have something to do with it.
Mhm. And so, if that's the case, if he comes in or is going to the airport, one or the other, he would have had a bag with him, likely with his luggage or whatnot. And so that would explain why he had a bag with all these clothes. But do you know, like, was there ever any ID or anything found, like a passport or anything? I'm guessing where they haven't been able to identify him, this stuff must not have been included with his bag.
Okay, to start with, he had just a backpack with like a change of clothes in it. So, if he's traveling, it's not very much. It almost seems like a carry-on bag. He
Hmm.
didn't have a passport or an ID. And I know you have I think even just to travel from province to province, you need an ID to fly.
Hmm.
I think that still applies. And I mean, a passport, if he came from a different country, he would need a passport to enter Canada. So the fact that he didn't have either of that on him was really weird to me. And
Hmm.
I don't know, it's like he threw it out or somebody threw it out for him. If he either didn't want to be identified or somebody didn't want him to be identified.
That's how it seems. Yeah. And other than so, as far as what was found with him, so he was found hanging, as we said. He had his bag with what I heard was found with him was clothes, glasses, no ID, no passport. Do you know of anything else that was like in the scene or on the scene that could have been seen as any kind of evidence?
No, and that's the thing. Like there was a flashlight that was found with him, which I thought, was kind of weird.
Mm.
That stood out to me. Why would you need a flashlight? There was like a Madrid soccer jersey. I mean, but that's like, maybe he just enjoyed soccer.
Yeah,
And
and that's kind of a stylistic choice as well. Like people will wear soccer jerseys just as a shirt,
yeah.
like a band. I would wear a band shirt. Maybe he would wear a soccer shirt.
Well, yeah, exactly. I would wear a band shirt. Yeah, no, totally. And that's what I was thinking. And what kind of made me wonder if he was from Europe or something is because soccer's so big over there.
Hmm.
And Madrid, I don't know. I was like, that just stuck out to me. I was like,
Just
huh.
like a hunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's found. There's no ID, so they can't figure out who this guy is. It seems like really all that happened from there is there was photos. There's two versions of his photos, but that are drawings. One was put out on in the news and the local paper looking for information on this guy. But do you know how much effort was actually made by the authorities to find him or find his family?
Well, that's what I can't find much effort. I know
Hmm.
that they looked at the security cameras at the airport, but I don't know how far back they looked. I
Hmm.
mean, that wasn't stated. They also said they looked at the Tim Hortons because the Tim Hortons is very close to where the Petro Canada used to be,
Hmm.
and it had a security camera out there. And they said they looked at that and they didn't see anything. And I guess they asked some of the airport employees if they saw a man matching his description, and they didn't. But, besides that, it doesn't seem like there was much done to, I don't know, find his family.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. But I think, and we'll get into this, but where foul play wasn't suspected, that probably takes some of the motivation away from like solving this. Like, I wonder, I'm sure there was a lot done behind the scenes by law enforcement, but it almost appears as if it was this sort of passive approach at identifying him, which is, we'll figure out maybe what he looked like and we'll put something up on our website and see if eventually, his family contacts us or something.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how it seems. Cause it just like, when I think of the story on its surface, in my mind, someone came here on an airplane, somehow ended up in the woods near the airport, hanging from a tree without their ID or passport and a flashlight on the ground. It just seems like, I don't know. I'm shocked that can't be solved. And I do know that the official ruling is that foul play wasn't expected. They believe this is a suicide. I also know that you seem to have questions about that.
I seem to doubt it. Like, I know, I mean, I don't know much about the autopsy or anything, but I mean, it seems such a weird place to commit suicide, I don't know. He didn't have like a note, and I mean, like, not everybody leaves a note, but he didn't have an ID, and maybe he just didn't want to be identified, but I very much doubt that he was from here, because you would definitely think he would have been identified by now. Yeah. So why come to Halifax and commit suicide by the airport? And I wonder if, because he was found hanging, they didn't really look into the cause of his death. They just made an assumption. So I don't know. Yeah,
but I do know, like, just the idea of, I think they call it suicide tourism, which is, let's say if you wanted to end your life, maybe you didn't want your family or friends to find you, or your roommates to find you or something. People will travel to another city and like go in a hotel or something and do it.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and that's something like there was a documentary I watched that was, I can't remember what it was called, but it was all about the idea of that kind of thing happening and what happens to these people that can't be identified. I can't think of the name of it, but it just kind of opened my mind to this world of like working in a hotel somewhere overseas, and someone from some other country just shows up and
commits,
and you have to find them. And it's so when I hear of Halifax John Doe, maybe I'm projecting my memories from this documentary, but I'm almost envisioning this person who just doesn't want to be, who wants to do this but doesn't want to be found. But at the same time, doing it in the woods outside the airport, it just seems really strange.
And there's like a really popular case. I don't know if you've heard of him. It's a Lyle Stivic. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he basically was like, it's not his real name. He went and committed suicide in a hotel in California, and left a note, and they weren't able to identify him for 15 years. And I think last year they actually found his identity, and it was a suicide tourism. So same thing. And the thing, what made me think it wasn't with this John Doe was the fact that it was in the woods. But yeah, like I thought, a hotel seems more plausible to me, but who knows? I mean, maybe this.
Yeah, just to give him a more like private area or something. But it's but then again, it's like he didn't have much luggage. He just had a bag, so maybe that could kind of speak to him not expecting to come here for an extended stay. But why Halifax? Halifax is not if you're buying it. Let's say if he's from, somewhere in Europe or something. Just as a guess, you would think that the cheaper airfare would be to go to Toronto or Vancouver. Like Halifax is kind of like, you kind of got to get a few connections to end up here.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that too. Like what if it was somewhere abroad? It is a lot cheaper to fly to Toronto or Montreal. So why Halifax, and why by the airport? I mean, if you're going to commit suicide outside, I think when you want to do it somewhere with a better, a nicer place, maybe not next to Highway 102. I don't know.
Yeah, it just the whole thing seems weird, and I guess that is why people are taken by the mystery of this man. Is it just, that explanation of just a simple, well, I don't know how simple suicide tourism is, but a case of that, it just seems a little out of, it just seems like there's a bit of a stretch needed to get there. And I think you brought this up in some of the writing that you did about this, is some theories surrounding the possibility of a drug mule kind of fitting his manner of death and how he ended up there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, at first I wasn't sure about that theory, but then I started reading more into it, and a lot of people were saying, like on Reddit and on other like forums, that this seemed like the most likely theory, because he obviously had money. Mm-hmm. If he was a drug mule, his family would not know where he went, which would mean they wouldn't know he was in Nova Scotia or was identified in Nova Scotia. His luggage, like he could have had luggage, say, and I don't know much about trafficking drugs, but obviously he wouldn't take his luggage. The luggage would be with whoever he was doing it for. That would be given to that person, and the carry-on bag could have just been his stuff, like a change of clothes. That no ID, no passport. If they say it was like something that went wrong, people could have thrown it out because it was fake. Or if he, I don't know, like maybe there was no other option and he had to commit suicide and he didn't want to be found. No, so he threw out his ID. Yeah,
and for people who don't know the kind of the drug trade and how drug mules operate, there's I'm addicted to those crappy shows on, I don't even know what channel, but it's like, it'll be like Airport Security, and it's like a reality show where the camera just follows around like people who work at the airport. There's one called Border Patrol, I think.
My partner loves that show. Yeah, Border Patrol, I think what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So in Border Patrol, I don't know. I think that's an airport in Toronto or Quebec, but basically what it is you see people coming across the international border trying to get through Canadian border services. And so you'll see border services and kind of ask them a few questions. Why are you coming here? They'll go through their bags with a little thing testing for drugs. But they often catch drug mules coming into Canada. And what a drug mule would be is, I'm from some other place or country or something like that, and my job is to sneak drugs into Canada. So I will have my suitcase full of my clothing and maybe a few books, but a couple of those books are hollowed out and filled with cocaine or something. And what I would do is bring that on the airplane, go across the border, pass it off to some random person at the airport, and then take my flight home with a couple $100 or whatever the payment is. So that's kind of what a drug mule would do. In this guy's case, the Halifax John Doe, it's you could make a case for that, because a drug mule, like you said, he wouldn't have told his friends and family, I'm going to Halifax to drop off drugs on Wednesday. He also wouldn't bring a bunch of his own stuff. He would just have a little backpack, just enough to stay comfortable for the 1 or 2 days of travel that he'd have to go in with. And a drug mule would likely be meeting with some dangerous people when they arrive here.
Exactly. Yeah, that's and there's another thing where he had, and when he was found, they did like they examined his body. There was his leg had been broken at one time, and either he took the cast off too soon, or he didn't seek proper, didn't go to a doctor for it. And people were thinking that maybe he didn't go to a doctor because he broke it while he was, trafficking drugs, and he didn't want any trace. I mean, that's just, another thing. It's just little things kind of make me think maybe that would be what happened.
Yeah, because he was... It was not that his leg was broken when they found him. It was like a previous break that didn't heal right, as if he, when I heard that, my thought was maybe he was just from another country where medical care isn't what it would be in Canada or the United States or something, and maybe it was just he just roughed it until it kind of healed on its own. But it's all a big mystery, and there's so little. There's so small amounts of evidence or clues that you're just kind of left speculating, and I guess that's why the mystery remains. He arrived here. They found him. It was October of 2004. So it's 17 years now that this guy's
Yeah.
picture's been out there without any
I
family finding him.
Which is crazy to me today, because like the internet, it's so vast, and I guess it's the fact that his case isn't very popularized that it may be why he hasn't identified. Maybe his family doesn't even know. They think he could be living somewhere else and just doesn't know where he is, right?
The photos that have circulated of him, they're drawings that were made from, I think they like took his like skull and tried to figure out what he would have looked like. It's like that sort of thing.
They did, and they did like a bust. Like I think they did like a bust of him. I thought I saw it. Like they put clay on a skull. Essentially they just tried to play on what he would look like. Like take a guess. So, but I mean, you've seen those estimate drawings. I don't know. Some of them are really bad. So who knows? Yeah.
Well, even with him, there's two versions, and they look similar, but they do look like two different guys. When I see the two photos that are going around of this guy, they look like it could be related, but they don't look like the same guy. So
no, yeah.
Who's to say? And then on top of that, let's say just putting a country out there. Let's say this guy's from Bermuda, and he has no connection to Halifax. Why would his family in Bermuda, be reading the local newspaper in Halifax in 2004?
Exactly. Why would they think, oh, he's in Halifax, Like, it is, and it's not like we're not a small province, but, like, we're not huge, It's kind of like just a random place. If they had no idea where he was going and he was from abroad, they wouldn't be like, oh, Halifax, or, oh, Nova Scotia, It makes me wonder.
Yeah, definitely. But it's one of those things where I think the answer's out there. Like he was somebody to a lot of people. He had money, so he must have either had a job or had some place in society. Like the people who seem to fall through the cracks are the people who've kind of been shut off from society for a long time.
Yeah.
This guy, that doesn't seem to be the case. Again, he had, name brand stuff and
brand new boots. Yeah. Like,
yeah. So assuming he has an apartment somewhere where rent isn't getting paid and a job he isn't showing up for and a girlfriend or parents or, people where he's not like a nomad. He seems just like any person who just disappeared.
Well, yeah, exactly. Assuming, I think that's why I'm so like set on trying to find him, because I want to bring his family closure, but I also want to like give him closure. I mean, they haven't even buried his body yet. It actually remains at the medical examiner's office, and they are leaving it there until he's identified so they can give their remains to the family, which I mean is nice, but it's kind of like he doesn't even have a final resting place yet. So
yeah,
it's sad.
And it's like, how long can that go on for? Because it's like, this is rare. As far as I know, there's only two John and Jane Does in Nova Scotia in like the last, I think, 75 years, I think is what I read, since there's been two in that
there's
period.
that girl in Yarmouth who was like 25 years ago, I think it was. I don't know. And then there's this guy. Yeah, there's not a lot. Like, there is no John Does from around here. Yeah,
but you would think with our airports not so huge, you would think that if they found him, even if they wanted to go back for the last 10 or 15 days, like I wonder how many people would have come and gone from the airport. And I know, like, from reading about cases that involve airplanes, every kind of flight has its list of all of its passengers. So I just wonder how many, like if you took 10 days of air traffic in and out of Halifax, like how many people would be on that list?
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering, like, because I wonder how far back did the police go? They must have looked through all like the airplane records and names, and
you would think.
I wonder, yeah, you would think that, and I wonder, maybe, I don't know, it's really weird to think like a flight he missed or something, or.
In my opinion, I feel like he came from the airport rather than going to the airport. If there's no foul play and it was if he intentionally took his own life, why would he come from somewhere to the airport, it would make more sense to come out of the
Oh,
airport
yeah.
and sneak away. So if that's the case, then his name would have to be associated with some flight, unless
Exactly.
he was on the flight under a fake name, which isn't improbable. This was before, or no, this would have been after
This was,
September
yeah.
11th.
This was
So
after 9/11, yeah.
actually,
Yeah, and
this was in 2004, so security would have been really tight then.
crazy. Yeah, it would have been really scary. Yeah, and I do think too that he definitely was coming from the airport. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I'm wondering, I mean, I hope the police looked into the list of names, but you would really think that, because, I don't know, there'd be a name on there that they could go through all the people. I mean, it's not that hard to go for the last 10, 15 days and to try and, identify each person. And I mean, they have their information on file, so.
Yeah, and they would at least have some basic info like age, race, because they
Yeah.
could. Because why don't you know the details of this guy's? Why don't you give me some of his description? Like, if you were to describe this guy with those stats.
So he's from he's African European descent, they think, but people have stated that because of the decomposition, he might have been more mixed race than they can actually say because of the decomp. By the time he was found, it was hard to tell by the way he looked. So, but they think that he was definitely African European. So. I mean, that's one thing. He had, I think he had short dreadlocks in his hair when he was found. He had prescription glasses, so I'm assuming he wore glasses in his everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, so some of that stuff would be the kind of. I'm just thinking, like, what would be associated with the information on, like, a driver's license, let's say. So things like height, eye color, hair color.
Oh yes, sorry,
Like,
I didn't even
oh
think
no,
about
no,
that.
that's all right. But I'm just like, as you were listening, I was trying to think of like this
What else?
data, like what could you cross reference it with to attach him to like a flight log? But
Yeah, he was 5'10", 5'11", around 160 pounds. They said between 18 and 23 years old, but I mean, looking at the picture, I think he looks older.
yeah,
Personally,
based on their, I thought so as well. But I wonder if foul play isn't expected versus if it was, how deep that investigation would go. So if they have to, if someone commits suicide at the outside of the airport in Halifax, are they going to take 5 cops and get them to contact the 5,000 people that came and went from the airport?
Yeah, no.
If it's a murder or something like that, and they could prove it, maybe that's when that kind of investigation happens.
Well, that's actually a really good point, because if it's just automatically ruled as a suicide, you're definitely not going to put as much of a research or police investigation into finding out who he was. But, if it was murder, you definitely, I mean, obviously they would be like, okay, we're going to go through and try and find out who did this to this person and find out who this person is, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think they automatically ruled it as suicide. I mean, I think that took a lot of attention away from the case, and it probably has negatively affected him being identified.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But what about this? Like, if foul play was involved, like I've heard of stories where people would, foul play would be involved, and they would set up the scene to, look like a certain thing happened and hide themselves away. I don't know if I've found a story where someone tried to hide a murder by hanging someone.
And that's true. I've actually looked into this, and I haven't found anything that really catches my attention. But yeah, that is true. That is a good point. It's just the suicide thing seems so odd to me. I think that's why I'm grasping at straws, like trying to make sense of it. And I mean, like, the suicide tourism thing is very likely too. I just don't know why he would get off a plane and go 5 minutes away from an airport and commit suicide, I guess.
Yeah, it seems pretty desperate. And let's say that is what happened. You
Yeah.
would think that there would have been other, like that would imply that he was pretty desperate and committed to do it and was probably in a bad state. And if so,
Yes.
wouldn't he have made himself known to like the person sitting next to him? Like you would think that someone would be like, I had the weirdest flight. Like this guy was,
Yeah,
it was
the
a
guy.
strange vibe. Like I feel like I would sense that.
I had the guy next to me, he was like weirdly, I don't know, just no, you would definitely think that he would give off some sort of creepy, like a paranoid vibe, or definitely, or
Just something, yeah.
Yeah, and also there's a hotel really close to the airport, and that's I mean, like maybe he didn't have the extra money, but I just always think like suicide tourism, like why wouldn't you want to go to the hotel? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the flashlight, if it was his flashlight and not just some random flashlight in the woods, which probably happens, on the side of a highway or something.
Well, yeah.
Maybe the flashlight's purpose was, maybe that was a part of his plan. I'm just going to get there and find somewhere.
Yeah.
But on the same token, if he had covered his tracks and was flying with a fake identity and had hid his ID and passport, why not just go into the bathroom at the airport?
Well, yeah, exactly. Why walk, I don't know, walk 5 minutes if you were that, in that much of a rush or that much of he must have been, if that was the case, he would have probably been, like in a state of disarray. I don't know. It just seems so, nothing adds up.
Yeah. Someone just added in the chat is, what did he have his rope in a carry-on? That seems unlikely. And I never thought of that. I guess we don't know.
I never thought of that either.
We don't know what he was hung with though. I don't know if that was, at least I don't remember seeing that as a piece of information the police released.
No, they haven't.
It could have been a rope. It could have been a shirt or a pair of pants, because he did have his clothing with him, and people can do it with that.
That's true, and I mean, like, he did have a belt, but his belt was like folded neatly with his clothing. But yeah, I never even thought about the fact that the rope. Yeah, if it was, I wish they would have released what he was hung with. It would make more sense.
Yeah, and you would think, like, if they don't suspect foul play and the only purpose of the police releasing info is to help him be identified, why would they hide? Like, why not just put it all out there?
Yeah, why not just give you all the details and be like, hey, like,
because they did do some kind of sort of like a pseudo press conference where they had all his stuff folded up on a table with, I think, his bust that you talked about, which is like his shoulders up. So they did show off the stuff, but they should just give, like, warts and all, like, here's exactly what we know and here's what we looked into. Because this guy, I think if all that was out there, it would gain more attention to this case, because it would give people more to talk about. And I think the only way this fella's going to find his family, or his family's going to find him, is if his name, or not his name, well, that would help, but if his face in the story gets put out there. So it's the police need to like partner with the public to make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah, like you would, like, if it's a suicide, then there's nothing for them. There's no holdback evidence. You would think that they would just release everything and let the public know all the details. And I mean, I wonder who found him. I would love to know that. Like, I mean, if you're listening and you happen to find him, message me. But I'd love to know who found him and talk to him about it. But they never released, obviously, who was the one to discover him.
Yeah, and that was a traumatic find, I'm sure. But it's
I'm sure, yeah.
The way I understand it is he was out of sight. It was like he was like behind the gas station in the woods. So yeah, I'm just guessing, but I could see it being. I don't know if he was far enough in the woods that it's like we're talking about like a hunter. But we definitely could be talking about some people on a motorcycle cruising around, or that sort of thing. Because when you're out that way near the airport, on the side of the highway, there's quite a bit of area that's cleared, and often you'll see like 4-wheel motorcycles and stuff driving through there. I could see it being a case like that.
That is true. Yeah, it could be. It would have been really traumatic. Yeah. I know. And I mean, like, it just, I didn't even, like, the comment about the rope, that really sticks in me, though. I would love to know what he hung.
What about this comment? Someone just in the chat just asked, do they not have his DNA? And that's another point. If they have his body, they can, like, now, I'm sure you've seen cases as a true crime nut where they do that. I think it's called like familial DNA,
Yeah.
where they can take your DNA and maybe they can't identify you, but they can be like, this person's, related to her, at least her aunt or uncle or something. You would think with his DNA, they could give a pretty good, someone should just take it and send it to ancestry.com and find out where this fella's from.
I know. Oh wait, no, go on. Sorry.
No, my mom did. She's really into like genealogy and all that stuff. And my mom did the My Ancestry or Ancestry.com or whatever that website is, where it tells you your history. But it also will tell you people who've used that service that are related to you. And my mom did it. So this is a crazy story. My mom did it, and she got a match being like, your brother and 3 sisters are connected. And my mom was like, I have 1 sister.
Oh my God.
Somehow, I don't know if you had to pay or what, but somehow she found 2 people who are her blood siblings. And she had no idea. And this happened like 2 years ago. My mom's like, in her mid 60s. And what she learned is that my grandfather earlier on in his life had children with another woman, but
oh my God,
back in the day, I guess they just kind of kept that hush hush and no one knew. And my mom has since connected with these women that she met through ancestry.com. And they actually sell masks for the pandemic. So I have masks from my newfound aunts.
And I have an ancestry story too. It's actually funny. I did the same thing. I sent in my DNA, and my dad never knew who his father was. And through cousins and like second cousins, it was really hard because not a lot of his family had it. But I ended up finding his dad, and his dad died never knowing he had a son. And his family doesn't really want anything to do with us. They're still like, the only one left is his 93-year-old aunt who would know. And she's like, she's from Newfoundland, the small town, I don't think she really believes in DNA. And
small town Newfoundland for you.
She's just like, no, there's no way he could have had a son. But, it's same. Yeah, it's interesting what you can do with DNA. And it's really cool that she got to know her sister. That's awesome.
Yeah. But with this guy, I wonder if that's an option, or maybe there's some kind of there's a lot in Canada. There's a lot of weird privacy laws and stuff. So I don't know if there's implications with that, but you would think that if there was public interest, maybe that would be enough to motivate police or whoever would have to make that call to get a DNA test to try to figure out what science can tell us about this fella. Because in 2004, when he was found, I don't think that would have been a thing that would be done. It probably would have been very expensive to do that. But now in 2021, it's like an entertainment thing rather than an investigative thing to get your DNA test.
Yes, and the thing is, it's funny because 2 weeks ago, I actually emailed the medical examiner about this case, and they put me in contact with the police because I was like the DNA Doe project. You've heard of them? Yeah. So they identify they find John Does, they find their identity, John and Jane Does, and I was thinking, if I could get the DNA released to them, then maybe just a broader, spectrum, they can try. Maybe, who knows? Never know what they'd find. So I spoke to the police officer, and he basically told me no, because they're a civilian-run project, and the only way that they would release DNA is if, say, I saw somebody who matched his description contacted that police force, and that police force contacted him. So it was there's a big, the laws around privacy are really weird here, which sucks because with DNA, you'd think there's so much more opportunity to find out who he is.
Yeah, that's a shame, but that doesn't surprise me. I've come across, especially as someone who reads up on these cases, especially missing persons cases, Canadian privacy laws often seem to fly in the face of kind of family and victims. I shouldn't say rights, but fly in the face of like the interests of some families and victims of these crimes. But I do get the slippery slope that's present when you start making decisions on behalf of other people. I think that's really where this is at, though. I think what this case needs is enough public attention and interest to either get the photo spread far and wide or to make the police or whomever just be like, yeah, we're just going to do it and do the right thing. Because no is very easy to say when you're getting an email from you. But when it's like CBC and CTV reporters are trying to get statements from the medical examiner about why they won't do this, and and the chief of police is being talked about, all of a sudden things happen.
Exactly, that is true. Yeah, no, I totally agree, and that's why I want to bring more attention to this case. Like, the more I let people know, the more I hope to get it out there. And
yeah, it seems like your interest is sincerely in identifying him and finding his family. Like, do you ever think about if and when that happens, like how you're going to react?
I don't even think, I've never actually thought about it because I feel like it's impossible at this point, but I would really love to. I don't know. I feel like it's not so much like it started out as like a project, but I mean, like, there's real people and that's somebody's kid and it's sad. But I mean, like, I'd love to bring that closure to a family.
Yeah. But then at the same time, it's like, if it is how it appears on the surface, it seems like he wanted to find a place where that wasn't connected to where he's from. But again, that's speculative.
Yes.
He didn't have ID and stuff, and he didn't seem to have a connection to here. It seems like maybe this was the way he wanted it to go. But I guess you can't just assume that and be like, yeah, we shouldn't help find his family. Because even if that is how he wanted to go out, his family deserve an answer.
Yeah. And that is true. Like, sometimes they just, that he doesn't want to ruin his family and be like, I just don't want them. Yeah, like, he didn't want them to know that he committed suicide. But at the same time, it's probably worse not being there. You're being like, I haven't heard from my son or my brother in 16 years. Like, what happened to him? I don't know.
Yeah, that vague. I heard it described once by... I did a series of episodes about a missing young woman named Emma Filipoff. And I talked a lot to her mom, and her mom had described the idea of, I forget the word she put on it, but I think it was called like vague loss or something. And it's the idea that you may know, or like logic may tell you something bad has happened, but you never have a chance to get over it or face it because there's always this like sense of hope, I guess, that just prevents you from getting through the stages of grief that you naturally go through. So you're just kind of always stuck at the beginning stage of the grief process because it's never like put in your face like this happened. So you're stuck just kind of in limbo. And
exactly,
this fella's family somewhere is probably thinking he's probably dead, but maybe maybe this is happening. So
they have like that sliver of hope kind of thing, and they can't, there's no closure, and like, it's just when you know that they're dead, I guess you can properly grieve, you can properly mourn, but how do you do that when there's no body,
when you don't even know if they're dead, and then just like as you described, his remains are somewhere in a medical examiner's office, probably in a box in a drawer.
Yeah,
that's
no
one wants that to be their eternity.
No, and it's weird though because I know the Jane Doe in Yarmouth, they actually buried her in a cemetery down in Yarmouth. So I don't know what made them not bury him, but like the fact that they're keeping the remains to hopefully find his family, but not putting a lot of effort into finding his family it's so odd to me, like, I don't know. I just would love to find out who he is and give his family closure.
And give him a better name than the Halifax Airport John Doe. Like, that's not a legacy I'm sure he wants to have.
No.
So for people who are listening that want to learn more about him and more about your work trying to understand who he was and how he ended up here, where do you suggest they go?
Well, Instagram, I'm at Lena Snooks, but the thing is, I'm thinking about making a new Instagram just dedicated to him, because I thought about making a Reddit account, but then I was like, maybe if I made an Instagram account and got his profile out there, and I'm just going to try and talk to more newspapers, podcasters, just make him more known. So I think the incident, even Reddit, I guess. I kind of thought maybe my Reddit is like a jokey thing, but yeah, I can put my Reddit name too.
Yeah, well, your Reddit post about him was really well done, and it had quite a bit of discussion. There was a lot of people chiming in on it.
It's the name. My Reddit account is a criminal tat. And the reason it is that it's crime in German, and I made it because
what is it? What is the name? I missed it.
I don't know. I don't even know how to say it, which is actually, it's funny. It's the word crime in German.
Okay.
I took German in university, so I was like, I want a crime-related username. So I was like, it's just going to be crime, but in a different language. So it's I'll give you the name. I'll type it to you.
Yeah, I'll post it in what I'll do, like in the notes, like the show notes for the podcast. I'll put links to your Reddit post as well as like photos of him and a couple links to the very little writing that's been done about him.
Yes,
sadly.
Yeah. The more people who know about him, the more chance we're going to find out who he is.
Mm-hmm. But I think it all comes back to how little there is about him, that there's not a lot to discuss. So let's say, like the story of Elisa Lam.
Yes, yeah.
So with Elisa Lam, of course, they found her. But if they didn't, that video of her in the elevator was enough to just get everybody talking. It was like an advertisement for her missing persons case. People all over the world watched that video. With this fella, all we have to go on is the very little information the police released in the drawings of what he may have looked like. So it's not enough to get people caught up. Let's say if there was some strange thing about some strange detail about him or some strange little thing on the site. That's the stuff that needs to be released so people get freaking out about it. It's almost like whomever at the police deals with public relations, they almost need like a marketing person that's good at social media to be there.
They do.
Yeah, because I see so many police releases where they're looking for information and it'll be, like this guy broke into a car, let's say, and they have a photo of the fella. And I just think, like, why didn't they make that post, like, fun and the kind of thing that people will share and they'll get this guy right away. But this boring post. Yeah.
Like something that you're like, oh my God, like clickbait. Like I want to click on this,
Yeah.
They do need like a social media kind of person. And if they had found footage of him on that surveillance at the airport or on that Tim Hortons camera, I think this case would have been a lot bigger because just like the Elisa Lam thing.
Or even just, let's say if someone had chimed in about the rope. Let's say if there was some unique detail about the rope.
Yeah.
Maybe it means nothing, but just put it out there so people will have something to chew on and talk about this. Because without new information, it's the only people who are going to find out about this are people who are looking at 16-year-old newspapers. I want to thank you for joining me in this discussion surrounding the mysterious discovery of the Halifax Airport John Doe. It completely baffles my mind that in this day and age of surveillance, documentation, and reduced personal privacy, that someone was simply able to be found hanging from a tree and remain unaccounted for. And with that, I'll wrap up this episode. But before we part, I'm going to give thanks. First of all, a huge thanks to Lena Snooks for sharing this story with us. For anyone interested, I've added links to Lena's posts about the Airport John Doe in the episode notes. I also like to give a huge shout out to Monty Datta for contributing the music to this episode. It's a piece called Noir Tokyo. And lastly, a massive thank you to everyone who listens to Nighttime. Without your interest and your support, Nighttime would be as pointless as it would be impossible. But with that said, keeping the show alive is and has always been an uphill battle. So if you want to help take some of the weight off the show's back, please subscribe to the premium feed. Not only will it keep the show moving, it'll give you more of each topic than you're going to find here on the free feed as I'm adding exclusive content weekly. For about the price of a cup of coffee, help keep the show alive by subscribing to the premium feed at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. And with that said, let me thank the newest subscribers. Mark, Deborah, Jamie, and Sam, thank you for your generous support. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show but can't help financially, Please consider keeping Canada weird by sharing the episodes on social media and letting your friends know about what we're doing here. If you have any story ideas or if you want to give feedback on the show, find me at nighttimepodcast.com/contact. I'm also on social media. I use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'm on YouTube most Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday nights at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time. So until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you have any idea who the Halifax Airport John Doe is.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte. Copyright Jordan Bonaparte.